Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners.
Is really picking up those systems and processes and making sure your small business looks like, runs like, and operates and communicates like a big business. And that's having those processes and those systems in place.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And yes, I'm your host, Billy Keels, and I am super excited to welcome you back to another amazing conversation. Today's guest, you're really going to love this one, like especially if you've been in corporate and you're transitioning from corporate into your own thing and you are wanting to get some insights as to how corporate can also serve you after corporate. It served me pretty well. And so I'm sure you're going to get more out of today's conversation. So also too, thanks for continuing to leave your honest written reviews as well as ratings. It means the world to us, helps us to continue to be in the top 1.5% of podcasts around the globe. And for those of you who continue to tag us on Instagram and tag us on LinkedIn, really appreciate that. Thanks so much. And listen, if you want to check out any of the previous episodes, well over 300 at this point, just go to firstgencp.com/podcasts. That's firstgencp.com/podcasts. You can find every single episode there. So as I mentioned, today we're going to talk about how you can really carve out your own niche. And when you carve out your own niche, you have your specific knowledge that you have. We have a guest today who has been able to effectively do that and make the transition from the corporate world, which was positive, to also leveraging a lot of the skills that were learned in corporate to be able to do his own thing. We're going to get a chance to speak to the principal of Relequity LLC. His name is Justin Smith, and we're going to get to that conversation just after this. So if you want to understand how understanding your clients' needs and carving out your own niche can be the foundation to your long distance investing success, then guess what? Today's a conversation you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. I promise. You know why? Because today's guest not only started out in his early career in project management as well as consulting. Definitely want to hear more about that and how it's also helping him help others today. He also spent over a decade in business development as well as managing client relationships. He was also the director of a big blue chip company in the rental housing space. And I think he probably may talk to us a little bit about that. And most importantly, today it gives me great pleasure to welcome the principal of Relequity LLC, Mr. Justin Smith. Justin, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Billy, how you doing, man? Good to see you. I know you're all over the place. I know you're either on the ocean, on the rocks, or wherever you are. But hey, you're here with us today, so thank you. Thank you.
No, man, I gotta thank you, man. You're today's special guest, so I'm excited about everybody learning from you and understanding how it is that you are continuing to make such a massive impact around people that are all over the place. So
yes,
here's the thing, Justin. I want people to get to know you. And as you know, I've got 5 questions for you. Well, technically, I'm going to ask you more than 5 questions, but I'm going to specifically ask you 2 in the beginning. I'm going to ask you 3 at the end. And so I'd like to get started, as long as that's okay with you, and help us understand, where is it that you call home today?
I call home the San Francisco Bay Area. So,
Fantastic.
I'm right in the heart of, San Francisco and Oakland and San Jose is kind of like this trifecta. And I might as well throw Sacramento in there too. We don't want to leave them out, but I'm right there in that San Francisco Bay Area. So, I'm a stone's throw away from Treasure Island and Alcatraz Island and the pier and the wharf and Jack London and all these treasures that are right here. I'm right here. I love to call it home, and I enjoy it. And I like weekend trips where I do staycations. Where you're like, I haven't been down the crookedest street in America in a while, so let's go do it. So I'll go out and drive down Lombard. So it's all good. I'm
all right. Fantastic. Well, appreciate that. So out on the left coast in the Bay Area, then I'm a big fan of positivity. Justin, can you share with us what is the most positive thing that's happened to or for you in the last 24 hours?
The one thing that I had a full circle moment, right? So, I teach courses at the City College of San Francisco, and a little bit more than 5 years ago, but I had a client. It was one of my construction companies, and I had their senior vice president come out and speak to my student group today. Or yesterday, as a matter of fact. And it was great to really have him share his experiences and in how the construction industry is changing, how real estate is changing, and how the one thing that was very important is that although we have changes, although interest rates are changing, all these circumstances, the important thing is people. People in the industry is still the quintessential thing that the industry, the construction industry, the job industry, the workforce industry, the corporations need, is people. And one question that came up was, hey, is AI going to take my job? And the response was no. AI is not going to fix your windows. AI is not going to talk to your tenant about a specific problem at 2 a.m. We still have that people connection, and it was good to get that. And I always thought that, but it was good to get that validated by an old friend from that particular construction company, and to share that with my student body. So that was awesome.
Well, that's fantastic. And it's nice to, like you said, when you have things come full circle and you can get that input, especially if it comes from someone else, and helping to bring more light to whatever topics may be on someone's mind. So, Justin, I appreciate you answering those first two questions. And here's the thing, I'm going to let you in on something that the entire Going Long family knows already. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So that means I try to do things. I try to do things sometimes that are a little bit, not possible, like tell your entire backstory in 1.5 seconds. So what I'm going to ask you to do is please tell your backstory, share it with us in your own words, and you can take a whole lot longer than 1.5 seconds. So take the time that you need to share us the backstory, share your backstory with us. And then the other thing I was going to ask you is if you could also, while you're telling the story, Justin, if you could talk to us about some of the major decisions that you've made to this point in your journey, and then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I want to share my backstory. I can actually sum it up in probably one sentence.
Wow.
And the sentence is this: ever since I was young, I wanted to create, build, own, finance, and manage a city block. Period. And so my whole sort of sense of being has been around that, understanding that journey, understanding that pathway. When I was in middle school, I was drawing, houses, or I was drawing, making things with Lego, or having clay structures, and then I make a clay Godzilla and tear it all down. But but nevertheless, I really enjoyed that, right? And it was a neighborhood, and I lived in a neighborhood where a developer came in, and we had a pathway to the park. Like you kind of go through the fence, and your mom's like, go around the thing, and you go through the fence anyway, or you jump over it, whatever. Mm-hmm. And we cut through this lot to go to the park, and then the developer came in and built like seven or eight Victorians on the lot, like really just like screwed up our little pathway. So we're like, man, what's up with that? But what was interesting about it is the exploration of, wow, what just happened, right? Mm-hmm. That wasn't quite a city block, but they made something out of nothing. And it was structures, and it was colors, and the Victorian homes, and it had detail, and there was a foundation that started there, and then walls came up, and then more walls came up, and then a roof and ceiling. And so that really created this burning and desire in me, and it validated what I was thinking. Hey, I want to build, develop, create, and buy and own, a city block. And so my lifelong journey has been that, going to school, studying architecture, studying construction management, studying investments, studying finance, studying real estate finance, and really going through all those steps. And then along the way, buying, single family houses, buying duplexes, buying this, buying that, and then going in which ultimately graduating to, the larger 100+ units, and then building and developing those things. So I really have just been on this journey to do just that. That one little sentence, I've been on this lifelong journey to do that. And then I've been blessed to have, parents, that were supportive of that, brothers and sisters that were supportive of that, and a whole community and a village and people around me that have been supportive of that. And I've been blessed to stay on that path to this day.
Well, having that blessing and being able to stay on the path and having the proper support in the direction and being able to take action, I think is something that,
yes, sir.
It's a great insight. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Now, it sounds like, you had this idea in your mind, and then kind of you actually saw it, right? Someone else was developing and kind of messed up your path, but you saw that what you were thinking about is something that others were doing. I always am curious because I think we all come across different opportunities to learn, to grow, to impact others in different ways. And you mentioned that you wanted to do that, right? You wanted to be able to create, build, own, and finance the city block. But I guess the question would even be before that, like, what was it that put that in your mind that you wanted to do that? Later, you saw that it was something that was able to be realized, but kind of where did you get that motivation to say, this is what I want to do?
I think it's probably intrinsic. There's things that your family, does. My uncles were in the trades. I had a one uncle that was get this, he was a underwater deep sea welder.
Wow.
So and he worked on the Bay Bridge. Then I had another uncle that renovated homes. And so I was the laborer, on certain things, carrying bricks or stirring more. One of my first things I remember as a little kid was stirring mortar. You're like, well, there's not enough water in there. It needs more water. He's like, no, it doesn't need more water. That's just keep stirring, right?
Mm-hmm.
But having sort of those role models around me that were doing certain things was kind of interesting to me, right? And just being ultimately interested in the built environment, and also being a bit of an artist. I like to draw. I like to doodle. So for those of you who like to doodle, and people say stop doodling, no, keep doodling, right? Because it can lead to greater things. But just having role models around me, just having sort of that spirit of curiosity. Just that intrinsic, hey, what do you like to do? What is your passion? I always, say, follow life and follow your work life through your passion, right? And that's sort of was my passion, was to draw, was to create, and that just led to creating and building and designing and so on and so forth.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and being able to follow your passions and being able to once again positively impact others, I think is something that is always appreciated, right?
Yes.
One of the things that I also wanted to come back, because you mentioned that you're in California, and I happen to know that you also enjoy, as the principal I talked about earlier with Relequity LLC, is you don't feel constrained geographically to one specific area. You're actually making impact in lots of different areas, the Midwest, the Southeast. But for so many people, that can be such a concept that is like mind blowing. Like, how can you live in one place and actually create value in another? And so one of the reasons in the genesis originally of this podcast was exactly that, right? Because I'm living over in Spain and was doing, investing and all this other kind of stuff, but back in the US. So talk to us about also, where did you get that vision, number one, to be able to think about not having any geographic constraints? And then number two, that you're actually going out and doing that, and what's that's like today?
Yeah, that's a two-part question. I thought we were trying to kick it to 5, but anyway, I'm picking on you. So hey, I'll say this. It really started with this mantra, right? And the mantra is, okay, what do I do? What do I enjoy? And how do I want to live my life and live my life with others? So it really came down to 3 C's: community, collaboration, and cash flow. So when you think about that, wherever you go, you want to, live in community, right? when I go to places, when I go to different cities and stuff, I pull off all the where I'm from type of things. I don't walk around with a big giant shirt that says I pull off some of those things, and I really tune into being a local, right? So I like to be local and understand what the needs of that community are. Now, if you're an investor out there, how does that translate to investing? Well, what are the needs of that community? What are the demographics of that community? What do people like to have in their homes, or what do they like to have in their neighborhood? What type of parks do they want to have? What type of fences? What type of security? What type of protection do they want to have? Because you might be buying an investment, but you're also creating a community. And then the second thing goes to collaboration, is collaborating with other people. So if I'm going to, go to another state, Iowa or Texas or Ohio or San Diego, which is my state, but if I'm going to go to these different places, I need to be able to collaborate with a certain team and trust that team and work with that team, whether it's my asset manager, whether it's my maintenance manager, whether it's the person that cuts my hedges, whether the person that, is redoing my roof, really collaborating and trusting and trying to get that trusted nucleus. Now, it's not easy. I won't, sugarcoat it there. It's not easy to collaborate with new people in different places, because if you are doing multi-state type investing, you do need to, in some cases, you might have to cycle through some people and really work through, hey, well, okay, they're not aligned with what I want to do. And then the third thing is cash flow, right? Because ultimately, you want a good life, and also you want your investors to have a good life, and you want them to share. And if they are investing in you or in trusting in you to carry that asset, you want to create that cash flow, right? And because what is it that many of us investors say? Mailbox money and that type of thing, right? So you want to be able to say, yes, we're entrusting in you, you're entrusting in us, and we will return to you, cash flow. And if you don't return that cash flow, then you probably need to throw in that last C, or the new C, which is communication. You do need to communicate. So really, it's those three things that help me cross into investments in different places, and really kind of give me that mindset to go to those other things. So it's a grounding element, but in very many ways, it allows me to move in different spaces. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely does make sense. And I appreciate you breaking that down for us, helping us to understand what the community, collaboration, and cash flow being the areas that you tend to focus on, and you can find those in any geography, as you mentioned before. It could be Texas, it can be Ohio, it can be even in the southern part of your state, which is still probably, probably 2-hour flight or something like that. Is that what is it from north to?
It's about an hour.
Okay, about an hour. I've been in Europe for too long, man. I've been in Europe for too long. No. So Justin, that makes sense. Also, too, I do want to come back to one of the things we talked about before, and this is something that is just really dear to my heart, and I know a lot of the viewers, a lot of the listeners, we think about when we were in corporate, right? I was in corporate for 26 years, had a great experience, and I think about a lot of the things that I learned in corporate during that time period that are still serving me and serving others today in a positive way. And I think a lot of times we get this corporate bashing, right? Everything's terrible and you got to leave and all that kind of stuff. I don't happen to subscribe to that philosophy. So I was wondering if you could share with us maybe some of the things that while you were in corporate that you see that those skills that you developed, that they are still serving you as you serve others today. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. The couple of things that came out of corporate, I think, was important. And that's really understanding systems. Having systems in place to allow you to do what you do best. Whether it's systems of communication, whether it's systems of processing information, whether it's systems of, or tools that, Zoom-like tools and things like that. Think of, I thought of it like, okay, what systems make the corporation go? The other thing is processes. And then maybe this kind of one and the same, but systems and processes are what allows you to have multiple people or interchange multiple people and keep the engine running, if you will, right? So, on that day when I, pick up the phone and go, hey, Billy, I'm coming to Spain, man. Like, meet me at the airport. And I want to be, I'll be there for like 2 weeks, right? When you leave, you need to have that system in place behind you that keeps the engine running. So that's one of the things that many corporations do, and they do very well, is build the infrastructure, build the systems, build the processes around it so that, things can continue to flow, whether you're I think of utility companies, right? You think of transit lines, you think those are big corporations, or you even think of, a food corporation, things like that. Like you wake up in the morning, you go down to the local supermarket, it's operating, the fruits are there, the engines are running, the meat department is cold, the freezer's cold, all of these different systems happen constantly. And so one of the big translations from, going from entrepreneur to, and small business, or going from corporations, and so on, to entrepreneur, small business, is really picking up those systems and processes and making sure your small business looks like, runs like, and operates and communicates like a big business. And that's having those processes and those systems in place.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing that as you really focus on the different processes. You think about systems, and sometimes they can be very elaborate, and sometimes it can just be as simple as knowing what the next step is. But this is just another one of the examples where you can use or you can leverage your corporate experience because you're effectively doing that with Relequity LLC today. So taking that systems process mindset, implementing that, and then being able to better serve your community. I'm going to come back to that. So one of the other things that I mentioned in the very beginning was, really understanding your clients' needs and carving out your own space. And so I also happen to know that you have enjoyed and found a niche when you were in your corporate and continue to do that today. But talk to us a little bit about what it's like when you know exactly where you want to play. And we can use real estate as an example, and how that actually gives you, I'd like to say, an unfair advantage because you have such a well-defined niche and are able to serve your demographic, let's say.
I would turn that around a bit and say it is not an unfair advantage, but it is your advantage. And everyone should understand or know their advantage. And I simplify it to this, and I live by this: know your lane and know your game, right? Because if you try to do something outside of your box or outside of your lane, inevitably you may have challenges with it, right? But once you get on that bike that and you riding smoothly, and the wind is at your back, and things come easy, and you go, mile marker 1 and mile marker 2 and mile marker 3, because it's what stick with that. As long as it is, aligned with, the community, or aligned with, regulations and laws, stick with that. And I think that's an advantage. I think people get it wrong when they stray outside, or they keep up with the Joneses, or they look to others and say, oh, well, they're doing it that way, I want to do it that way. No, maybe that's not the best thing. Maybe you should find your strength and find your core competency. Once again, that's a corporate concept. But, and so I'm translating that to you, I, or your listeners. Find that core, and then stick with that, hone that. And that's what I've done in terms of that built environment, in terms of how to get a building out of the ground, in terms of how to attract people to that building, in terms of selling that building, in terms of making it curb ready and having curb appeal, in terms of having, systems and pipes and windows that are not broke, and water that runs and stays hot, and floors that are flat and clean, and whatever the case might be for that built environment. Stay in there and hone that and make that better. And then you'll find yourself getting to the point where you're an expert in this space. And that's where I want to be. I want to be, a qualified, dignified expert with true years of experience in this space. And so again, I say, is it a bad thing that you're singularly focused or linearly focused on a particular area? No, it's not. You should know your lane and know your game.
Know your lane, know your game. So I appreciate that, and thanks for breaking it down for us as well, Justin. I did want to ask you before we get into the going long final three, because we kind of have to get into the going long final three because that's what everyone's sticking around for. Is I want you to talk to us a little bit about how you are actually what it is that you're doing today, how you're helping others with Relequity LLC, just so we get an idea of how you're positively impacting others today.
I like to positively impact, and I get back to community. I'm a president of an organization right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's called African American Real Estate Professionals, AREP, AAREP Bay Area. And so I'm really just helping those that are coming behind me. Some of the younger folks, whether it's youth straight out of college, whether you're kind of early in your career or mid-career and so on. Really understand that, hey, there's an environment and there's people around you that might be doing things that you're doing, and you may be stuck, or you may be trying to look for a partner for this, or you might be trying to look for, training on that. And I just want to create this environment where people can come together and share knowledge, right? And those that might be senior in their career, they can reach back and share their knowledge. And those that might be young in their career, they can reach forward and obtain new knowledge, right? And so that's just one of the things that I'm working on right here in the Bay Area. And we have speaker series, we have networking events and things like that, just to really kind of build that community so that folks can reach forward and reach back.
All right, fantastic. Well, appreciate you sharing that with us, Justin. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, man. Like, we got to get into the going long final three, but I never ask any of our guests, and today you're our special guest. Okay. The going long final three, unless you tell me that you're ready. So, are you ready?
I am ready.
Yeah, you were born ready, man. I knew you were going to answer that way. Here we go. So we started with you over in the San Francisco Bay Area, or in the Bay Area. I'd like to bring things back to this guy who's from Columbus, Ohio, on this side of the pond over here in Europe, and have you share with us, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or is still on your bucket list to visit?
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I know you probably heard this a lot, but Paris, France is a place that I have visited. And I really enjoy, and so that's my favorite European city. But hey, I got a bonus for you. I am
overachiever.
What's that?
Here you go, being an overachiever.
Oh man, I got to. But a little diversion from your question. But I am interested in going to an African country, and that's Ghana. So that's a little bonus. So I'll have to read it. So
very cool. Very cool. I've got we can talk about that after. I've got some good friends who just recently come back and gone and all that kind of stuff. So, and yes, I have a big, wonderful memory of Paris. It's one of my 1 year sabbatical, which is now at its 22nd year when it started. So it started in Paris and it's been phenomenal. So anyway, we won't digress anymore. We'll get into question number two. So question number two really has to do a lot with the going long final three, of course, has a lot to do with things that I've recognized from those people that have gone out and are continuing to make positive impact on others. And really, one of the things that happens is typically when you're trying something new or you're working on moving something forward, you don't always get things right the very first time. So what I've noticed about really experienced people is that whenever they make a mistake or have a learning experience or a learning opportunity, you might hear it called, every single time that something relevant happens, they put different strategies, tactics, and actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same problem or mistake happening again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I don't want you to think about the mistake or the mistakes in this one particular instance, but what was the one lesson that you learned from that particular learning opportunity? And what's that one lesson you want to share with us today?
I'm going to say something that's cliche, and you probably heard it before. Reading is fundamental. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is the circumstance was a situation where there was a clause or a piece of language in an operating agreement, and we didn't quite catch it, or maybe it didn't understand the significance of it. And so when a certain activity, happened, in the company, We went back to that and saw that language allow for that to occur. But if we had read before and really thought about some of those things, and I know some of these documents can be long and intensive and 17 pages and so on, but sometimes you really have to read these things. Sometimes you really have to get into the meat and details and think about, well, what if this happens, or what if this happens, and think. And yes, everyone, wants to be in the spirit of, positivity and this and that, and wants to move things forward. But you should think about, well, what if, things don't occur as you think. And so the documents are supposed to support both sides of that equation. So, we either misread or didn't read or didn't really understand that particular piece. And if you don't, that's okay. Find somebody who can. Reach out to those that are in your orbit or your sphere that might be able to help you with that. But definitely read things and really get a better understanding. And don't just brush over it and say, oh, well, they'll take care of it. No, really read it and really understand it. So
read it.
That problem.
Sorry, say that again.
That was the problem that caused us some major hardship. We had to work through that, but yeah.
And so, like you said, it's the point of reading being essential, fundamental, and being able to, if you don't understand it, then ask someone who does, which I appreciate you going into that community aspect as well. And that brings us to question number 3. And this is the last one. And this is also about filling our minds with knowledge. I'd love for you to share with the Going Long family today. What is the one book that you would recommend to us today?
The one book I'll recommend to you is Workplace Experience. A friend of mine wrote a book on workplace experience. Her name is Lenny Rivera. And I'm, helping her with a couple of things. And I really enjoyed the book because it really talks about sort of the workplace, not just being this place where you go to and you have to, do whatever it is that you do, some corporate process, or it could be a small company. But a workplace is a place where people thrive, is a place where business grow. It's a place where culture is created. We do spend a lot of time in our workplaces, right? And so, I really enjoyed that book. And it's one of my book of the months, right? Okay. So, I try to choose, one book every month to read it. And that's my current favorite.
Okay. And it's repeat that one more time. Workplace?
Called Workplace Experience.
Okay. Workplace Experience.
And it's by my good friend, Lenny Rivera, LENI RIVERA.
Lenny Rivera. We'll make sure we include that in the show notes as well. Workplace Experience. And, Justin, I think about just from the very beginning of the conversation, when you start talking about, the way that you were wanting to help make a difference with others, or you talk about that one sentence when when you're growing up, you want to be able to create, build, own, and finance your own block, which I think is just absolutely phenomenal. We've seen you also go out and gain relevant experience in corporate world, being able to leverage that experience from corporate to now being able to serve others with Relequity LLC, a clear understanding of systems, process, how that can also help you to continue to more effectively and efficiently serve others. Talking, helping, sharing with us, know your lane, know your game. These types of things is where we can see you continuing to make a positive impact on others. And I know like the Going Long family is going, yeah, Billy, just ask him the question. So here's the thing. With all this goodness that you're sharing with us, everybody wants to know, what is the best way for the Going Long family to find out more about you, Justin, what you're doing, and also what you're doing at Relequity LLC?
To go to relequity.com. And it's RELequity.com. Simple as that.
RELequity.com. Make it super simple for everybody. And Justin, on behalf of the entire Going Long family, I would like to say thank you for deciding to invest your time with me and with us today. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Billy, I appreciate the time. I appreciate your wisdom. Appreciate the podcast that you've been doing, because believe it or not, you're part of my community too.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate it a lot. And Justin, if you give me like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, probably, I just want to wrap things up and then I'll give you time back. So Listen, Go Along family. I mean, Justin, he shared so much knowledge with you. He gave you his 3 C's, helped you to understand what his philosophy is and not having the geographical constraints and continuing to build community, continuing to move forward. Take today's conversation, listen to it again, share today's conversation with others. And then, as he talked about, go from the theory into the practice, have conversations around what Justin shared with you today. And while you're doing that, I'll be here preparing for the next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much.